Alright, what is up guys? Barry back here with another video. And in today's video, it's gonna be a little bit different than most videos. We're doing a manga recommendation of Oyasumi Punpun. Goodnight Punpun is a psychological romance adult anime. Now in the past, the only animes that I've mentioned in the psychological field have been the Grissia franchise, the Future Diary franchise, and of course, Classroom of the Elite, which a lot of you come to and watch me for. Now in that anime, it talks a lot about how one character is basically outsmarting a group of a lot of other smart individuals and rising through the system so he can just live a normal life. Now that anime is great, that light novel is great, but something that I didn't like about that one was because as much as the other characters are very intelligent themselves, they don't really exactly stick out as much. You see, it's just one character really driving the story forward, and that's cool, but it's just something I particularly didn't like as much. The rest of the characters themselves weren't as detailed and defined, making it a lot of, honestly, filler. Now, the world of Punpun is probably the best work I've read up to this point. Not because Punpun is some real intellectual or some really good smooth talker. Punpun is painfully average. There's nothing in particular that actually speaks about him that makes him special to the society. And what makes it even worse is he's growing up as a child of divorce, brewed in isolation, with the people close to him being the adults being broken and unfulfilled. You see, the people in Punpun are like me and like you. And what's really telling about it is that I don't particularly have a character design that really sticks out to me that I'm just like, wow, that's just insane, or some really point story of it. You know, you can think about it to an anime and say, hey, that character with this design is really cool, it's insane, it's the best thing I've ever seen, something like that. Or you can go back to a particular part in the story to where it's just like, whoa, that's the big plot twist and this, that, and the third. But Punpun doesn't necessarily have that. When I think of Punpun, I don't think of some fantasy world to where I can just like escape to and forget about the world I live in here. No. The characters of Punpun are painfully realistic. And at any point, the story can really change from one character to the next. At really any point. Now, most shows have a system of accomplishment or a sense of a goal, and I really do talk about, and I like this aspect, and that's what makes a lot of shows really good and great in my opinion. But this anime, this manga, doesn't necessarily have one you can point to in terms of showing you how far you've come along the way as a viewer, to show how you can achieve all your dreams if you just work really, really hard, that anything is possible. You know what I'm talking about, right? We've heard these ideas and these points a lot. In fact, almost in every anime, just about. The world of Punpun, in fact, isn't like that at all. They crush your dreams. Punpun's world crushes your dreams. They show a painfully honest picture to what life can really be like, what it is for the majority of people in it. And when I was finishing this manga and I was reading the comments on it, like, wow, this is such a beautiful story and it's so amazing how, it ends out, and I'm just like, I have a particular different, I guess, view at this. I never saw this as a beautiful, beautiful story. I thought it was an amazing story. I thought it was a masterpiece, but beautiful wasn't the word that I describe it. Now, the people in the world are just well described and detailed. Every character feels like a real human being. But when I say that, I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think of it as a far-off land. I can point to these particular people in my own life and say, that character reminds me of this character. That character reminds me of that character. That character reminds me of myself. That's what I see when I read this manga. That's what I think the world is trying to get across. And like I said, the world of Punpun doesn't really have a great send-off message. In fact, the last thing they talk about is how some things never change. Some patterns stay the same. Some topics don't really go away. And they put it in a very adolescent and childish way, but it's very true. It's very, I almost want to say, like, haunting of a feeling. Punpun talks about thoughts and ideologies that I'm I'm sure heard before, and shows just how much beautiful is in the world. It can also be very cruel and evil. The fact that his parents get divorced so early on into the manga, and yet that's not really a big damaging part to the story, was the first thing that just kind of stood out to me. Because that was never intended to matter so much at the beginning. That wasn't something that was going to lose the readers. A lot of times if you're watching an anime, reading a manga too, wouldn't they have this particular point maybe in the middle? Maybe at the end? But they had it in the first chapter, but yet it didn't hurt them in any way. That was the first thing that kind of just stood out to me. It was like, this one could be a manga to remember for me. And I'm sure some of you might point out that this could be a very valid reasoning point for the trouble that happens later on in his life. And it is. Part of it is. But when I look at it and I look back onto it, it really was just a bump on the side of the road. It was just a bump into the story. It really wasn't meant to straight up define Punpun himself. His end pattern to me wasn't really altered. And I began out of habit to just write down every little thing that kind of stood out to me. Something that I thought was going to be a very major point to the story later on. But then after I'm reading and I'm writing down these words, they meant to be nothing. Things like videos. And I know this might not be your typical recommendations of how videos go. It's just kind of, when I was reading, this is the best way I think I can talk about it. Because I can't, like I said, I can't turn to a character design. I can't talk to just strictly one character in particular that drives the entirety of a story like Punpun. Because Punpun as a character has changed so much over the course of a couple years, slightly, radically, and it's kind of hard to get a grasp on him per se as a character. But that being said, I think that's going to really do it for this manga recommendation. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully maybe I made you want to go read it. If not, I understand. It's cool. I don't think this is for everyone. I think it's a masterpiece, but I don't think everyone has to read this or should read this. But I think that's going to do it. Very anime out. Peace.